Banking to try and put that into some sort of perspective for you. Monza, the old banking at Monza is an average 30 degrees of banking. Jeddah, the banking turn there has a 12-degree turn, so it's slightly steeper than that.
But I think it's because it's such a small corner, so it's quite a tight corner, so you feel the banking even more. Interesting to see the different lines there in the race situation. In quali, I think they'll all be going high line.
So here's an indication maybe of Williams' struggles, although Albon got the best final sector so far. A 1:12.9 is the slowest of the first three times. His teammate Nicholas Latifi in the 1:13s. The two Haas cars for this weekend were at a track that should reward their car a little bit because it's high downforce here because of all the corners. Joe Granu goes fastest. The teammate Valtteri Bottas only fourth fastest. I fear a bit for Valtteri Bottas today after that 148 race run where he avoided a Q1 knockout. I wonder if there's two coming in successive races. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda has had a lap time deleted for exceeding track limits. He's sixth for long. Here's the man they've all been waiting to see.
Do you think?
Possibly.
Let's have a look out the window and see if the Orange Army get excited when he leaves the pits. Oh, yeah, there you go.
It's either that.
Orlando Norris has sold way more t-shirts than Ricciardo. Yeah, well, boy. Charles Leclerc coming out at the same time as Max Verstappen.
Cheers for him. But let's see if we can pick up Max Verstappen as he comes out onto the track and listen to the roars that will greet him as he heads around the track. He said in the Thursday press conference that the crowd here don't make a difference to lap time. Setup does, but it's kind of nice to have the fans here.
It is, you know, he'll feel the love definitely, but when he's on his flying lap, it's just you and the road. But this is a good idea, getting out here reasonably early. It's one of those tracks that if there's an incident at the end of Q1, they will red flag it because it's very difficult to remove the cars from the track.
He slowed down there to let Sebastian Vettel pass. Vettel on a flying lap, 24.8 through the first sector, a 24.6 for Lance Stroll. Don't discount the Aston Martins for a Q3 time here. And don't discount that a lot of those fans will not be sitting down whenever they see Verstappen on the track. Yeah,
when he had his issue in FP1 with the gearbox, they were all stood up. It was such sad scenes, just not what they wanted at the start. Look at that, fantastic.
Seriously, it's like someone's just scored a goal for Holland in the World Cup every time he comes round and hits the final corner. So I'll tell you what, Jensen, together with Max Verstappen, pole sitter this time last year, take us through a lap.
Let's hope he's on a quick one. Right, down the straight, DRS fully open, all the way through the gears, up through the gears, down through the gears, braking as late as he dares into turn one. It comes up on you a lot quicker than you think here. Apex not so important, but it's about getting on the throttle as soon as you can over the exit curve, into turn two. It's a little bit blind into turn three initially, and then you're into it. Oh, look at the cars through there. A little bit nervous in the rear over the curb on the exit. Easy through 4, 5, and over the blind crest through the right-hander here, which is a little bit off throttle, a bit of understeer in the car on the first up on these tyres, and then he's down a gear for the right-hander here. A little bit more neutral there. Braking here, sometimes the rear can break away, but not so much for Max. Bit of oversteer on the exit, though. We've got to remember the circuit is still a little bit green, as Crofty said, from all the sand from the beach. Up through the gears, again into the chicane, downhill here, braking is a little bit tricky, easy to grab the inside right. Nicely through the first apex, ran a little bit deep actually for the left-hander. We couldn't see the exit there, which is a shame. Now we're into the last proper corner on the track, which is this right-hander here. They carry so much speed into there. Use the curb on the exit, and now it's just head down, trying to hit your revs correctly, so you get a nice straight line speed.
And his DRS wide open all the way to the line, and he's straight into the 1:11. So 1:11.3 for Max Verstappen. Pole last year for Verstappen, a 1:08.8. I don't know what happened to Charles Leclerc in the first sector, but he was massively down on Verstappen's first sector time, as was Sergio Perez to his teammate too. But Leclerc does manage to get second fastest, albeit 0.8 of a second off the pace that Verstappen has set. We'll talk about that in a moment, but we'll follow Carlos Sainz over the line into the 1:11s. And I think Leclerc might have made a bit of a mistake in that first sector because he was so down on Verstappen.
Yeah, now it's a tricky situation. He's got to do either a slow down lap or two, as you said, and do another run on his tyre, or he's going to have to probably go again at the end of the session, whereas Max can probably just sit in the garage.
Yeah, Ted will be working out down in the pit lane what the cut-off time is, a time that's going to be safe to get your way through. Is a 1:12.1 enough for Charles Leclerc? Sergio Perez only a 1:12.3, 1 second difference between himself and his teammate, with the two Mercedes now out on track. George Russell and his teammate Lewis Hamilton. We're watching George Russell in the main screen and Lewis Hamilton in the picture-in-picture as Alex Albon goes 7th fastest. Don't discount track evolution being a key here as well. The more cars that are out there running, the more it cleans up, the more grip you get, although I think George Russell could have done with a little bit more going through that left-hander.
Yeah, a little bit of oversteer there. It wouldn't have really cost him too much time if he got on the throttle nice and early, but both the Mercedes drivers seem to be enjoying driving the car around here, which is great to see. And comes across the finish line, P2.
Yeah, gets a really nice toe behind Daniel Ricciardo. Just see the sound, couldn't you, going into turn 1 as Hamilton goes 3rd fastest. So Verstappen's time impressive, but the two Mercedes getting under 3/10 away. It hasn't put a smile on Toto Wolff's face, but I wouldn't imagine it's put too much of a frown on him either. Now, you'll have seen Lando Norris essentially noted for an unsafe release. Yuki Tsunoda was coming down minding his own business, and Lando was released straight into the path of the AlphaTauri. Now, no harm done, but...
Background safe release there by Norris. Copy that.
George Russell in the car right behind Yuki Tsunoda. It's going to be investigated after the session.
George has just got his friend into trouble.
Yeah, well, there's no proper friendship when you're out the track.
Big moment in the last corner. Yeah, we saw that.
He is not wrong. That was a big moment. That's seriously quick into that corner. They carry a lot of speed in. They seem to turn in while they're still on throttle before they come off, and big snap.
About 140 miles an hour through that particular phase. Ted, down to you.
I think that's going to be a fine for McLaren for that unsafe release, so don't worry about any grid drop for Lando. It shouldn't be that. It tends to be a fine. So let's see what Zhou and Bottas can do as the Alfa Romeo Sauber struggle to get clear out of that bottom 5. I think we're looking at a high 1:12, Crofty. That should be the cut-off time. So that means Latifi, Gasly, Bottas at the moment, and Zhou Guanyu need to find a couple of tenths of a second at least. What's that for Bottas?
1:12.2.
Yeah, I'd say that's safe. I would say that's safe. But as for Sebastian Vettel, he wants to try and get cleanly out of this session, something he didn't manage last time out. But he's got a bit of understeer, so they're putting a bit more front wing in the car before his next one.
Zhou Guanyu 1:12.0 and Fernando Alonso into the 1:11. So we're looking about a 1:12.1, I think, for the cut-off point. Esteban Ocon could be right on the fringes of that. Potentially safe with his latest time. Tsunoda 1:11.9. Track's ramping up a lot here, Jensen.
Yeah, you're going to be want to be on the circuit as late as possible in the session, but you, as I said, you always have the risk of that red flag. But the times are tumbling. Yeah, it's going to be within a second of the probably about 6 or 7 tenths of the quickest time if Max stays in the pits.
So it's interesting, isn't it, as we watch Sebastian Vettel's progress. Perez down in 15th now. Red Bull would have loved him to have enough pace just to put on one set of tyres, do one lap, and get safely into Q2. That is not the case, and it wasn't a great qualifying for him last year, of course, before he took the penalties and had the pit lane start. Better first sector for him on this lap. Sebastian Vettel struggling there, only 16th fastest. They'll be scratching their heads what's happened to his pace.
Yeah, definitely, because as we said, the circuit is picking up a lot. Here's Checo. He's stayed out on the same set of tyres, and he's done a 24.6 first sector, not too bad, 25.0 second sector. So he's matching Russell, who went P2, so much better lap from him, and he needs this one.
He does. He's on course for about a 1:12.0, I think, Sergio Perez, which certainly should be enough. Charles Leclerc, a little bit off the pace on his latest run. They decided he needs to go out too. Perez crosses the line, so 1:11.6, his final sector was pretty decent. There's Charles Leclerc making his way round the banking with the DRS wide open and crosses the line with 5.5 minutes to go second fastest. That should easily see him through.
Yeah, times are a lot closer than I thought they would be going through Q1, but let's see if Max is going to strap on another set. Probably not from there.
Well, if he's strapping on another set, then the track has definitely ramped up more than anyone really thought.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, it's risky. I mean, yeah, we'll see.
Down at McLaren, that's Daniel Ricciardo. Sat in his car. Ricciardo losing the season head-to-head battle down at McLaren. Been out-qualified 12-2 by Lando Norris in 2022, so no chance of winning the inter-team battle. Same with Nicholas Latifi at Williams, 12-2 to Alex Albon. Currently, there is Nicholas Latifi's car. What he's doing there is...
looked like a very light finger touch and check of the front end of the car.
Wondered what earth that achieves, unless they got a bit of cabling caught somewhere in the suspension arms. So Vettel definitely coming out again. Ricciardo's got to find pace. Albon's already out, not out of qualifying, but out on the track on an out lap. Mick Schumacher and Nicholas Latifi. Only a second between the top 20, which is not surprising, given it's the third quickest lap time of the season and one of the shortest laps that we did.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, though. It's not one of those easy tracks. For example, Monza is a little bit easier with the corners that you have. Braking into turn one is key, but the rest of it, it's not like here. This is a tricky track to get right.
It is. What would you do if you were Carlos Sainz and his engineers on a 1:11.7? Would you want to be coming out again?
You would normally come out reasonably late, start the lap, and they will judge how many people they think are going to jump in front of him and pit early and use that same set of tyres in Q2.
Might be on the fringes a little bit there. In the bottom five, Sebastian Vettel has been out in Q1 in 5 of the last 6 qualifying sessions before today. Daniel Ricciardo, who's only been out in Q1 twice during the course of this season. And Alex Albon, who was up into Q3 this time last week, and what a good time to do that, because he started 6th. So how is this lap looking? A 24.6 for the first sector. 10ths off the best sector time in that part of the lap. Not too bad at all.
Well, that puts him the same as Russell, who's in P3 at the moment. So if he can hold this lap together, he's a little bit further down, second sector.
He's lost half a second or so during that middle sector. Williams is great in a straight line, and then through the twisty bits, loses a bit of time.
Yeah, everyone thinks that they've got very good efficiency, but I think they're just have a little bit less downforce than other people. But the middle sector's the one that's hurt them there. First sector's good, and last sector's normally good as well. So,
but it does go, crucially, 7th fastest, 1:11.6.
And in front of Sainz.
Yeah, so that might just mean that Ferrari got to send Carlos Sainz out. George Russell is already coming out. We can head down to Ted in the pit lane.
And so is Sergio Perez, who follows the Mercedes out of the pit lane just past me. But what on earth is going on with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris and McLaren? They're trying different ways to get the tyres in the right window. Yeah, there is Sainz, by the way, Crofty. He does go out again, but on the same set of used tyres, as does Fernando Alonso. They can't afford not to be out there, really, even though Alonso, you would suggest, is safely through in the top 6. But yeah, McLaren just seems to be a tyre issue. Can't get the tyre to hold on towards the end of the lap.
And is that overheating towards the end of the lap? Or even on these hard tyres, the pressures, starting pressures, can lead to a bit of overheating.
Yeah, even with the Red Bulls, they're getting those snaps second to last corner. Oh, listen to the touching through there. Oh, it's properly on the deck, isn't it? Which sometimes really unsettles the car. You lose a bit of confidence for that, but looks pretty good around here. Or big, as I say, that big snap of oversteer. Not too dissimilar to Max's lap. But look, 18 of the 20 cars out on track.
Brilliant. Only the top 2 staying in the garage, and whilst it's a decent-ish lap for Kevin Magnussen, and he's on course to get out of that bottom 5, he doesn't want too much more of that. It's a much better lap from his teammate Mick Schumacher, and it's a decent first sector for Zhou Guan Yu too. Magnussen could be in a little bit of bother here as he makes his way around the banking for the end of his final flying lap of this Q1 session, and only goes 12th fastest. That might not be enough for Kevin Magnussen. Mick Schumacher goes into the top 8 and into the 1:11. Valtteri Bottas is picking up time, but not a huge amount, and he could be struggling too. 148 races. Valtteri Bottas making it out of Q1, and the Spa didn't go well because of the power unit penalties. It might not go too well here either. Zhou Guan Yu, 10th fastest, What of Valtteri Bottas? Personal best, as Sebastian Vettel sets the best overall first sector. Bottas only 12th fastest, ahead of Stroll and Magnussen, and, well, sadly for him, within touching distance of that bottom 5. So Vettel's going well, Stroll's going well, goes 4th fastest. That's the Aston Martin pace we've seen for much of this weekend. Ricciardo crosses the line, only 17th fastest for Daniel Ricciardo. He is out in Q1 for what is a 3rd time this season, and that's massive disappointment for him, as his teammate Lando Norris goes 3rd fastest. He got the tyres working, and Daniel Ricciardo, you get the feeling, didn't. Yuki Tsunoda goes 2nd fastest as he crosses the line. Esteban Ocon only 12th fastest. Carlos Sainz might find himself in a bit of danger. Not a great first sector from Carlos Sainz either. Pierre Gasly next across the line. Gasly goes 11th fastest, pushes Sainz a little bit further down. Sebastian Vettel has pitted at the end of the lap that he was on.
I think he might have had a problem. He was going very, very slowly around the last corner.
He might have gone off the track. I was watching the timing screen, and I think at the chicane he's made a mistake, and that's rather blown. A great opportunity for Sebastian Vettel to make Q3 here, but it does save the likes of Carlos Sainz, who was very much on the fringes. But we ought to say, what a disappointing performance there from Daniel Ricciardo. Seconds before his teammate goes 5th fastest, he's out of qualifying.
Yeah, that is really painful. You know, a lot of the guys actually didn't run new tyres either.
No.
Lewis has gone P2 on a used set of tyres, that's a really impressive lap. Pretty much identical lap to Max's. But no, the big disappointment is Daniel Ricciardo. I thought he was on for a good one this weekend.
What happened to Sebastian Vettel making his way then towards the stadium section? Oh dear. Towards the final corner there, that is how you ruin what could have been a really impressive lap right at the last, and once it started drifting, he couldn't hold it.
You see the little under rotation he got at the rear then as well, halfway through the corner. So, yeah, it's one of those things. He had to give it his all, and, you know, he had to push the limits, and it just didn't work out for him in the end.
And Lando Norris was the car coming behind Sebastian Vettel.
Did he back off?
You wouldn't, would you? Best way to avoid the car coming back onto the track is to get there before he comes onto the track.
but I don't know if there's a yellow flag there yet, but normally you'd have to back off.
That's what you say, yeah. It's a very good point.
I love that. No, why would you? Just go quicker. Get around the car.
I've been hanging around F1 drivers for way too long. Let's just watch Kevin Magnussen into turn 3, and whilst some take a high line, that's a little bit higher than Kevin would have liked, and looks a little bit like he's gone outside track limits there as well. But he's already out, and that is the first part of qualifying over and done with. Nicholas Latifi slowest qualifying for the 3rd time in the last 4 races. Vettel, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Bottas also join him out.
You just never know what's around the corner.
Drivers have to adapt quickly or get left behind. Formula One on Sky Sports, sponsored by Workday, a system for finance, HR and planning.
Lots of people ask, what is equity release? How does it work? Is the money tax-free? So, let me explain. Equity release is another form of mortgage. The main type is a lifetime mortgage. You take a tax-free lump sum to enjoy, pay off
So the Ferrari team principal, who joins us now live from the Ferrari pit wall. We'll talk about Carlos in a moment, Mattia, but that track seemed to ramp up, get a lot faster very quickly out there.
Yeah, you're right. Track improvement is significant, even during the same run on the same tires. You cool them down, you go ahead, you go again. I think the track is certainly faster. So track improvement is something you need to take consideration of for the second session, and certainly as well for the last one. It seems to be all very tight there. Max, not a surprise, very fast. Not the two Red Bull, only Max. But it will be very tight ahead.
So can you risk being the last man to cross the line before the checkered flag? Because that seems to be the best time to get your final lap in.
I think that most of the drivers will go for it, but then traffic will be an issue, and even more important, I think, is the outlap. To have the tires preparation in the right windows of temperatures, that's what's the most significant. So you need to balance the risk of being the last and have a proper outlap.
And was that Carlos Sainz's struggles? Because, look, 3/10 between himself and Charles Leclerc, but it was a bit nervy and he almost didn't make it.
No, not really. I think it's the very first lap of the session of the quali. Each single driver is not taking any risk. And I think he was simply slower because at the time he was not as fast as he could. We decided ourselves to stop in the garage, save the mileage. And when he went out for the second attempt, we knew at some stage that he could simply back off because he was safe. So he didn't try. He could have done certainly a lot better.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mattia, for explaining all that. We'll be back with you if it's okay before Q3. Max Verstappen, one of only two drivers to get through to Q3 at every single race so far this season. Hasn't started in the top 10, of course, at every single race, but he and Carlos Sainz, the two to be in Q3 at every previous round. If you're just joining us and you've got Sky Glass or Sky Q to watch your Formula One action with, or if you want to watch the highlights alongside the live action, you can do so by pressing your red button. We have our own Jensen button in the commentary box. I'm trying to make a decent segue.
That was one of your worst,
Crofty.
Yeah,
Was that a bit late?
It was a little bit. No, it was just great. Right. It's good. Anyway.
So rescue me by saying something intelligent then.
Alex Albon's out on track.
That's intelligent.
He's also on used tyres. Yeah, which is surprising for the start of Q2, but I guess they're trying to save him because he thinks he can get in the top 10.
So can he get to the top 10 for a second week in a row? Let's just go back to the... Oh, red flag already. Hold that thought for a moment. Alex Albon is the only car on track and going round the track. I wonder if someone's got some flares that have been let off and there's a bit of smoke billowing over the circuit at some point here. I only asked that to say that. Yeah, they are. Because it has been a problem this weekend. And yeah, there's a flare on the track, which is ludicrous and stupid, and it's been extinguished, which is great. But look, they say hand the flares in before you enter the circuit. There's a reason for that, because they can be an absolute menace. And luckily it's gone out before Alex Albon has got anywhere near it.
And you might not think this is an issue, but it's just messed up his run. So if he had a new set of tyres on, he's just lost that new set of tyres, that initial grip you get from a set. Luckily he's on a used set, but it means that he doesn't want to run on this again because they're going to be cold for his next run.
It is interfering with the sporting spectacle, with the way Williams want to do their run plan through no fault of their own. They now have to try and find a plan B. Just don't do it. Don't bring flares to any sporting event. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think we're going to have enough fun without flares.
Yeah, there's a ton of pigeons around.
Gotcha. Never bring pigeons. Never bring pigeons to a Formula One race.
There you go. I knew you'd say something intelligent. Yeah, we've had trouble with pigeons. George Russell noticed the pigeons.
But they're always on that corner, because when I drove the Hesketh round on yesterday, the pigeons didn't move.
Pigeon corner.
And I don't know if I was probably wasn't going quick enough, but he's got a tag on as well, that one. Maybe that's why he's not able to take off.
That's Speckled Jim, the plump pigeon.
Do you know all of these by name?
Yeah, Speckled Jim, famous pigeon. Okay. That's why they tagged it. Session's going to resume in 4 minutes' time. I'm not sure what they can do about the pigeons, though, because they're obviously finding a bit of food down there, which is why they've all gathered on the outside of this corner.
But it's actually the apex of of a really fast corner as well. You know, it's turn 7. But you'd think that a Formula 1 car would scare them away. They're quite loud, and there's a lot of wind that comes off them. You think they'd want to leave, but no. It's best tickets in the house, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So for pigeon fancying, and I wonder if they've got some grass seed down there, you know, where the cars have gone off the track. They put a bit of seed down to grow the grass, and that's why the pigeons have settled down there. Well, we'll try and find out an answer to that one. I'm not quite sure Karun Chandok is pigeon fancier extraordinaire, but there's no end to the man's talents. He's down at the sky pad now. What you got for us, Karun?
Well, Simon Lazenby can tell you about my bird fright. I'm terrified of the thing. So
Yes,
I'm watching Lando Norris. You know, we were asking about his last lap, Crofty. Well, I've just found it. As he's coming that last corner, there's no yellow flag flashing, which is unusual because you can see Sebastian Vettel there, if I roll along, it has gone off, and the dust is clearly kicked off. It's very unusual that they didn't throw a yellow flag, but they didn't, and Norris didn't have to back off. There's no yellow flags there, so he is in the clear, and that's why he can keep that lap.
Excellent. We didn't think we saw a yellow flag. We didn't see a yellow flag.
We didn't, and good job as well. He finished his lap, and it was a good one.
There's a man on the track chasing pigeons away. And it's not Ted Kravitz, although I'm sure he'd do a very fine job. Ted.
Sorry, Crofty, I didn't follow you on what?
There's a man on the track chasing
the pigeons. Well, it's the flares.
Marshall.
It's the flares that I've got a line on. So they have decided after, you know, many races, Austria, they're not banned. Here last year, they're not banned, although I think they have set fire to some dry grass in the past round here. But they have decided to ban them. So there is now going up on the big screens a sign to the crowd, it may be too late, it is prohibited to set off fireworks and other incendiary materials. If you do use flares, this is on the big screens to the crowd, you will be removed from the premises. So
Good.
but they're not checking people, they can't check people. What are you going to do, a whole body search before you get in? There are signs as you come in saying if you do have flares, they're not allowed, so please put them in some kind of bin before you come into the circuit. Obviously, a lot of spectators are not heeding those warnings. Maybe these signs saying that if you do them and you're identified, you'll get chucked out and not refunded or anything like that, not allowed to come back in. I don't know how they'll do that for tomorrow, but anyway, then maybe they'll take heed of that, because that's just nonsense. Never mind if you're behind someone who lets off a flare, it must be a pretty horrible experience.
Yeah, it's not a nice smell, that is for sure. It's not particularly safe, given the fact that the grass areas here are very dry indeed, so you don't want the flares really being chucked onto the grass, as actually happened here last year. I saw a video last night of someone, a video that had been taken in the crowd area that showed actually the flare catching the grass alight, but it just also, it absolutely ruins the sporting spectacle when we have to have a red flag. Williams have to think again with Alex Albon, and well, we'll get going in a moment, but it's just a bit unsatisfactory. So for future reference, leave them at home.
They stink as well.
They do. Last year they seeped into the commentary box as well to breathe in that rather acrid smoke. Right, enough flare chat, enough stop the pigeon chat. Dick Dastardly's done his bit down at turn 7. And we've got rid of the pigeons, so we can get going again. As they often say, gents, the fastest way to clear pigeons from a track is to get 15 cars on. That's what we've got.
Exactly. Albon out first again.
Williams obviously have that run plan. They still think they can go with it.
Well, they had another set of views, because he ran twice in Q1.
I'm told the flare thrower has been removed.
Amazing.
Good. Don't come back. So told that Sebastian Vettel, when he went off, as we saw at the end of Q1, his line was his lap was affected by dust that had been thrown onto the racing line by the car running ahead of it, which is a problem.
It is. Both Red Bulls out on track as well.
Interesting. Early stages of this Q2 session. which is slightly shorter than Q1 by 3 minutes. And once again, we lose the slowest 5 from this session before the top 10 all go and battle for pole. This is the man that was on pole this time last year.
Running on used tyres.
Running a tribute helmet to his dad, to Jos Verstappen this weekend. Jos's colours that he used to carry in Formula 1.
Yeah, I raced against that helmet back in the day.
You did? Oh dear. Did you race that long ago, is what I think there. Not,
yes.
Was it that long ago?
I raced for a long time, so yeah, I raced that long ago.
Right, do you want to take us through this lap then? Verstappen, let's see what he can go with this time.
Here we go, into turn 1. We're a long way away from the car, so I can't really tell you much of what's going on, but he ran turn 1 nicely, used a lot of curve on the exit. Down to turn 2, this is an interesting, oh, look at the rear movement through there. That's definitely unsettling before you get to turn 3. Again, bit of oversteer on the exit of 3, down through 4, easy flat, 5, easy flat. The rear touches the ground a little bit here over the brow of the hill. Oh, look at that, he's very confident to turn in. Pigeons are still on the right. Down 2 gear, or down 1 gear, sorry, here for the right-hander. The car looks really pointy to me, but that is how Max likes to drive it. A bit of understeer there at the apex. And now into turn 10, left-hander. It's all about getting the car turned before you get on power here, otherwise you get understeer and then a bit of a snap of oversteer on the exit. Down the hill, listen to the crowd. Turn 11, turn 12. Good exit there, and then into the last 2 corners of the track. You're going to be a little bit cautious here with the amount of dust we've seen thrown up. Good exit, using all the curb. Round the last corner, DRS wide open, head down. Let's see what he comes up with.
On the used set of tyres, it's for Max Verstappen a 1:10.9. The 2 Mercedes drivers, Russell and Hamilton, have thrown on a new set of boots for this particular lap. Perez a 1:11.3, 4/10 off his teammate. Alex Albon on those used tyres that you were talking about. Jensen a 1:12.0 for him as he crosses the line. They're the 3 times we've had so far. So that is an impressive lap time by Verstappen on used tyres.
Yeah, he's 4/10 quicker than he went in Q1, but they did seem to be going quicker even on old tyres at the end of Q1.
On board with Carlos Sainz, new angle. Look at that. Showing the banking and the undulations here.
I love this angle as well because you get to look at the wing and what it does under load, how it backs off, and it gives you more efficiency in a straight line. And then back up again, you see that lifting up to give you the downforce through the low-speed corners. You'll see it again on the straight, especially the left-hand part, the outer part of the front wing. You'll see it backing off. There you go. See the 2 metal parts there?
Yep.
And then lifting up.
It's a fabulous camera angle, this. I like this, and I hope it's here to stay, especially around tracks like Zandvoort, where you are moving from side to side with the banking. He's just setting off on a fastest lap. Russell and Hamilton midway through their latest flying attempts. Hamilton's going well, only 5/100ths of a second off the pace. Norris has just done a 24.3 for the first sector. I mentioned it because it's the best first sector we've had so far, and that's why he's purple, as you can see on the timing screen. Russell a 1:11.4 as he crosses the line. As Lewis Hamilton got a bit of extra pace, crosses the line now, puts himself second fastest, so within 1/10 of a second of Max Verstappen, but it's new tyres against used. Hamilton on the new, Verstappen on the used. Either way, still very close. Here's now Lando Norris as Mick Schumacher goes 6th fastest. Norris powers his way down the straight. The one remaining McLaren left in qualifying and goes 5th fastest ahead of Albon and Mick Schumacher. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, who we're on the outlap with, is nearly 4/10ths down through the first 2 sectors.
That is surprising. It's funny with the tyres because people obviously think there's still lap time in used tyres, which is a bit of a surprise, but they seem to be holding on well. So I think we'll see Leclerc maybe do a slow lap and then go at it again.
And Sainz crosses the line in with his teammate now 7th fastest as he goes 6th fastest overall. Have Ferrari then got a bit of fuel on board for a couple of flying laps? Lauren Mekis, the sporting director down at Ferrari, watching on. I'm sure he's shaking his head, he's just moving it as he's having a conversation, but it might be a bit of a head scratcher, those 2 tyres.
Surprising, isn't it? Used tyres as well, but it's 6.5 off of the Red Bull. That's not what we expected.
Great first sector by Lance Stroll. Middle sector lost time, picks up a little bit more in the final sector, goes 4th fastest. Gets a round of applause from his crew because he's ahead then of George Russell in the Mercedes.
George Russell and Lando Norris, which is a bit of a surprise. That's a great lap.
Lance Stroll has gone longer than any other driver on the grid at the moment without a Q3 appearance. 9 races he's gone without that since Miami. By the way, 5 years today, he started, or qualified, and then started on the front row at Monza, became the youngest front row sitter of all time at that particular stage. As Alonso now sets off on his latest lap. So let's compare, Jensen, with you taking us through it, the Verstappen lap to the Alonso lap.
Yeah, oh, look at the turn in. Fernando is, he's a brave boy, and that was a very aggressive turn into 2. Turn 3, a little bit of movement on the exit on the curb, through 4 and 5, just you're trying to be as smooth as you can here, not scrub off any speed. He was a little bit calmer on the turn in here through the long right-hander, and then we're down a gear for the right here. He seems to be very confident in the car. I mean, Fernando always seems to be. But then a little bit of oversteer on the entry there, which would have cost him his position, but exit seemed good. And then you're through 10. Good exit. It looks really calm, the car. You know, I think Fernando is always going to get the maximum out of the car, especially in qualifying. But it seems to be underneath him. He seems to be able to drive calmly, I guess because he's got so much confidence in it.
Does calm equal quick, though?
It does. I think it does. I mean, it means that he's confident in the car. He doesn't have to try and wring its neck.
Certainly did with you. Sometimes, you know, you can hustle a car around and get extra speed. 1:11.6 for Fernando Alonso, pretty much on a par with his best time to, what, 5/100ths of a second in Q1.
I mean, you wouldn't say it's that quick, but then he is splitting the Ferraris.
Well, that's the thing. The Ferraris back in the garage again. It wasn't, well, we'll do this with fuel for 2 laps. We'll get this lap in, and then we'll come back to the garage, which is probably even more of a head scratcher. But they had used tyres on, but then so did Verstappen.
Yeah, and so did Lewis in Q1, and he did 11.3 on used tyres. So he's not actually gone any quicker, Lewis, on new tyres.
A little lull at the moment, so let's head down to Ted.
It's weird that, isn't it, Jensen? I'm not seeing people going quicker, really, compared to, certainly, if you're not Max Verstappen, to Q1 as well. Some of the times in the drop zone are 12.1, 12.2 for Gasly, Ocon, Mick Schumacher at 12.7. That is slower than the time he did in Q1.
That's a second slower than his Q1 time.
I mean, you would, and the circuit will definitely be improving. So, you know, Lewis only went, was it 2.5 tenths quick on a brand new set of tyres.
George Russell and the other Mercedes has been getting some coaching as to where he can find some time. A tenth of a second in turn 1, he's being told by his engineer, and then 0.2 of a second around turn 8, turn 9 area, and that will propel him, they say, to around Hamilton's lap time level. We'll see how he goes.
So into Tarzan we go. First corner with Alex Albon.
Oh, he had oversteer there, didn't he, on entry, which has definitely cost him time. Hopefully he's not going to be thinking about that for the rest of the lap and trying to make up for it. But he's not as wide there, is he, as some of the other cars. A little touch of the curb and some sparks coming off the edge of the floor.
Projected knockout time, 1:11.5. So he's got half a second at least to try and make up Alex Albon.
He's 1.5 tenths down the first section. That's on Max, but that has been their strong sector, first and last sectors. So he'll be a little bit disappointed with that. Bit of oversteer there on the exit. It seemed a bit lazy, the car, through that corner. But we got the straights now, so this is where this car is definitely at its strongest. Especially after turn 12. There's only one corner before the finish line. So last sector is, I think, where we're going to see the pace of this car. Middle sector is the weak one. You know, he's a couple of tenths down on most of the cars in front of him. So, yeah, not the lap that he would have been hoping for.
No, round the back he would go with Alex Albon, who has got Zandvoort to himself in terms of on the asphalt at the moment, because there's no other car on the track. Only 10th fastest. He's right on the fringes. 3 tenths inside the safety margin at the moment, Alex Albon, but is that going to be enough to give him a second Q3 appearance in succession?
I think he probably lost a couple of tenths at turn 1, which is a pain. Hopefully he's got fuel on board to do a slow lap and another quick lap.
Low speed corners, Lance Stroll ranking, his car ranking as the fastest at the moment. By much, 0.04 of a second to Hamilton, 6/100ths to George Russell. Hamilton, by the way, on his this flying lap in the Q2 might have just got a bit distracted by traffic going into the final sector. There were a lot of cars around, so I'm informed.
Impressive lap then.
Yeah, that's the case. But this is what it all comes down to now then. Last 2.5 minutes, everyone's going to be out on track. There's going to be an awful lot of traffic there, and there's going to be some hot competition to try and get into those top 10 places. Albeit the track isn't necessarily ramping up in the way that we would have expected. Maybe that little lull for the flares and the pigeons at the same time. Maybe a bit of sand's blown onto the track, hasn't completely gone away.
It's always going to ramp up a lot through Q1 until they get the, putting lots of Pirelli rubber down.
Hamilton going out of the pit lane on old scrubbed tyres, so I'm informed. Maybe they feel they've got enough pace in the Mercedes that they want to keep a couple of sets fresh.
Yeah, so they split it. So George on shiny new tyres. So yeah, confidence, I like it.
Right, so Albon back into the garage. That's it for Alex Albon, I think, unless they can turn him round very fast in that Williams garage and he can get a decent outlap in. But I think that's it for Alex Albon, so he's going to be keeping his fingers crossed then, whilst we watch Charles Leclerc, the man with more poles than anyone else in 2022. 7 in total, but his first job here is to try and get out of Q2, and currently his car is only the 9th fastest out on the circuit. So has he found a bit more pace in this first sector? Well, it's better, 24.3 from Charles Leclerc, but still not on a pace of, Sebastian Vettel, who's got the fastest first sector of a 24.2 in this session. Zhou Guanyu, 500th insider time he needs to get out of that bottom 5 ahead of Leclerc. He's got cars, Gasly, as you can see, Fernando Alonso just moving out of the way. Schumacher's going well, 2/10 up as he tries to get out of the bottom 5, and Leclerc still about a 10th and a half off the pace.
Yeah, middle sector wasn't so good, was it? First sector was blinding until Lando Norris came along and did a 24.2 purple sector.
Once again, Lando Norris right in the sweet spot for a final flying lap here. So Leclerc powers his way at 140 miles an hour round the banking of the final corner, down the straight. That's more like it for him and for Ferrari, into the 1 minute 10ths. And 600ths of a second slower than Max Verstappen, who has stayed in the garage, I should say. Zhou Guanyu goes 10th fastest. Alex Albon is out of qualifying as Lando Norris goes 4th fastest overall. He's not at risk. Zhou Guanyu certainly is. Here's Mick Schumacher, crosses the line, gets into Q3 for the time being. Zhou Guanyu is out of Q3. Checker flag now flying as Carlos Sainz goes fastest overall by 1/10 of a second from Max Verstappen. Ferrari now showing Red Bull very much what they're made of here, and it's Verstappen and Sainz into Q3 as they have been at every race so far this season. Ocon 10th fastest. Alonso, his teammate, is on a flying lap, and at the moment he is in the bottom 5. Yuki Tsunoda went very rapid at the end of Q1, and he's put himself into the top 10. Esteban Ocon is out of qualifying in that Alpine. Pierre Gasly is on a decent run for AlphaTauri. George Russell goes 2nd fastest, only 1/100th of a second off Carlos Sainz. Replicate this in Q3 with the top 6 separated by 3/10. It's going to be absolutely epic. Here comes Pierre Gasly, and he's not made it. Qualified 4th last year, hasn't made it into Q3 this year. What about Fernando Alonso? Crosses the line, stays 13th. That is massive disappointment for Alpine, for whom Ocon and Alonso both out, and the man who's tipped to replace Alonso at Alpine also out in Q2.
Yeah, that was disappointing for Fernando. He had a really good first sector. He was only 2/10 off of Lando, who was quickest in sector 1. So yeah, it sort of went downhill after that.
Well, traffic, Red Bull intermate. I don't know what he was doing.
Well, we said traffic might be an issue, and for Fernando Alonso, it very much was. They were the 3rd quickest team on ultimate lap time at Spa, were Alpine, and there's no Alpine in Q3. Let's have a look at what he was talking about. Sergio Perez, is that really traffic?
It doesn't look like traffic from here, but it would have affected him. But I don't think there'll be any penalties for the car in front. He tried to move out his way as much as possible, and it doesn't, for people watching Formula 1 thinking, well, he wasn't in the way at all, but you definitely get the air effect.
So no Alpine in Q3 for the first time since Spain.
Solid qualifying and boxes lap, box.
Yeah, copy. Thank you. Not an easy day for the team, but yeah, keep pushing.
And there's no Alfa Romeo either, because Zhou Guanyu is also out. Alex Albon was the slowest driver. Zhou Guanyu also out, as I mentioned. Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Pierre Gasly, all out. Sainz the fastest.
Out exit of the last corner, so just check the floor and everything. Okay, understood.
Yeah, checks going on at McLaren after that final corner moment for Lando Norris. And nerves, I'm sure, up and down the pit lane. We can't work out who's going to be on pole. I wonder if the teams have got any ideas. Mattia Binotto is with us, team principal at Ferrari. Well, Carlos Sainz, the fastest man, Mattia, but boy, is that close between the top six.
Yeah, seems like so, but Max on used tires, so Max is certainly very fast today and will be, we believe, the fastest. But let's see, behind it's a close battle. I think that Russell got only one set of new tires left. That to his disadvantage, but certainly it will be very, very tight. Track improvement has reduced, so track very stable now.
Yeah, I was going to say that's certainly what we felt. What's the difference? What's that time difference between a new set and an old set of soft tyres? What are we looking at there in terms of tenths?
I think it's half a second, more or less. So it's quite significant.
Half a second, yeah, I can see why you're thinking Max could still be very much the favourite here. Not so much an issue in this one, but you've still got to send your man out at the right time, haven't you?
Yeah, I think the traffic can be an issue still on the outlap because you need to have your own pace. So being in the queue, being in the trains, that's not optimum. So I think everybody will try to be outside at the right moment to avoid those type of situations.
We're looking forward to this. Do you look forward to this, or are you just too nervous about it?
No, I'm curious.
Good answer. Mattia, thanks ever so much. Not nervous, not excited, I'm just curious.
Oh, he seems very calm, doesn't he?
He's the team boss, he's the man in charge, isn't he?
That's the most stressful job in the pit lane, I think.
Is that your team boss is never that calm?
No, never.
Maybe that was the driver.
Oh, yes. Probably, yeah. Thank you.
Let's just hear Mick Schumacher on the team radio a few moments ago.
So box now, Mick. Yes. Box now. We're going to do Q3 now. Watch the weighbridge lights.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
It's his fourth Q3 appearance of the year after Spain, Canada and Austria, and not a bad time for Mick Schumacher to show what he's made of. Ted, down to you. And Austria, and not a bad time for Mick Schumacher to show what he's made of. Ted, down to you.
Absolutely, Crofty, absolutely. Very, very timely for Mick Schumacher. Just this morning, Gunther Steiner, his team boss, saying Mick needs to show us more of what he can do, more of the heroics of qualifying in Canada and Austria, and less of the mediocre performances. So that's on the right road. Credit also to Yuki Tsunoda for getting through, beating Pierre Gasly by only a tenth, but Yuki is in Q3. And I told you that new rear wing of Aston Martin was working well. What a great stuff, great performance by Lance Stroll to be in Q3 as well. But yeah, a real balancing act developing on what Mattia Binotto was saying about what tyres each driver wants to use and then what tyre they want to save either for this Q3 session or to try and take some new tyres each driver wants to use and then what tyre they want to save either for this Q3 session or to try and take some new tyres into tomorrow. The soft and the medium, the prime 2 tyres they want to use tomorrow. Very tough on tyres. We've got the 3 hardest tyre compounds here, haven't we, Crofty, on the list. But that's a fine balance of who wants to save some new tyres for tomorrow.
So as the cars trundle down to the end of the pit lane and the green light is on, the crowd stand and rise to cheer Max Verstappen on to what they hope will be a second successive pole here this year. Sky Q and Sky Glass customers, there's been an awful lot to look at in qualifying so far. You can watch the highlights alongside the live action by pressing the red look at in qualifying so far. You can watch the highlights alongside the live action by pressing the red button. Jensen Button, who's your money on for pole?
Crofty.
All right, good. Who's my money on for pole? You don't want to spend any.
It's nice to see Max out on track first again. Normally you don't go out on track at the start of the session, but I guess he just wants clear air. You know, they feel that the pace is good enough that they can just go out there in clear air. So it's definitely, you know, you could say brave in some ways, but not in others. But no, I'm looking forward to this session.
Is that you saying Max is going to get pole?
No, it's such a difficult one. You can see he didn't have a new tyre. You know, he's been on used tyres compared to the guys that have been around him, but I don't think it's half a second. I think the Ferraris are going to challenge Max in Q3.
Arnoux, Piquet, Prost, Verstappen, previous pole sitters the last 5 times we've had a Dutch Grand Prix. Remember last season, Verstappen here was, I think it was his smallest margin for pole of any race last year, wasn't it? 3 100ths of a second. Narrowest margin for any of his 10 poles in 2021, but his DRS wasn't of a second. Narrowest margin for any of his 10 poles in 2021, but his DRS wasn't working on his final flying lap. Here he goes for a flying lap here. He's in the final part of qualifying, along with his teammate Sergio Perez. Lando Norris is already out of the garage for McLaren. Mick Schumacher and Yuki Tsunoda are therefore he's in the final part of qualifying, along with his teammate Sergio Perez.
Still surprising. That's a long way off of the pace, isn't it? Even if it's used tyres. Very unexpected, very different to... Here we go. Through Q.
Just getting a feel for this.
Yeah, it's still surprising. That's a long way off of the pace, isn't it? Even if it's used tyres. Very unexpected, very different to... Here we go. Through Q, turn 3, bit of oversteer on the way in. Exit to turn 2. Oh, he's lost time there. I'd say it's probably a tenth and a half, because you carry that all the way. Turn 3, bit of oversteer on the way in. Exit to turn 2. Oh, he's lost time there. I'd say it's probably a tenth and a half, because you carry that all the way down to turn 7.
So the 2 Red Bulls, I think, have stayed out as well. Are they going for a cool down?
7.
So the 2 Red Bulls, I think, have stayed out as well. Are they going for a cool down, couple of cool downs, and then going for another run?
Well, Max is thinking, well, I lost time. So, you know, if we do a little cool down lap, the circuit might improve a little bit and I can get more out of it. Turn 3 is nuts. I was stood on the outside of turn 3 in practice on the exit, and it's just wild seeing the cars come through there. Here's George. Exit. And it's just wild seeing the cars come through there. Here's George.
Certainly is. Christian Horner earlier today was saying, look, this is going to be tight for pole. We think we've got it, but it's going to have to be Max. That earlier today was saying, look, this is going to be tight for pole. We think we've got it, but it's going to have to be Max that drags out the final bit of
they're kind of out of place as well. So I think that he can still have a good race for those two for some good points tomorrow.
We shall see in tomorrow's race. And so, that moment where you're alone in the cockpit with only your data for company, what goes through your mind?
Well, he's probably a little bit more stressed than his teammate is. You know, he's half a second off of him. So he'll be going through the data. As you saw there, he had the sheet of paper. Old school still. We've got sheets of paper for trying to work out where you're slower and where you're faster than your teammates. So he'll have all the data there. Where Max is braking, where he's braking, where he's picking up the throttle, loss of time.
The 7-7 of the qualifying battle this season. Ted's got some news.
But remember that wasn't representative from Russell because that was on an old set of tyres. So Russell, 6/10 I think it was, around that behind Lewis Hamilton. So now with a new set for George Russell, he's going to be right up there in the picture. What more can Hamilton do? That was a great lap to be just a 10th behind Verstappen, maybe a little bit more, and he might be able to get near the Ferrari as well.
Ferrari of Charles Leclerc with 7 poles so far this season. Not since Michael Schumacher in 2004 as a Ferrari driver picked up 8 poles in a season. And he's currently on provisional pole, but not by much. 1/10 of a second to Max Verstappen. Couple of tenths to Lewis Hamilton, and his teammate Carlos Sainz will be thinking, well, if he's got the pace in that Ferrari, I might just have the pace in my Ferrari too.
Yeah, but it's always nice having that provisional pole
going
into the last run of qualifying. But yeah, it's very, very close.
Well, you said Verstappen, exit at turn 3, will have lost time on that exit. Is that enough for a 10th, I wonder? Yellow flag. Has somebody gone off on an out lap? Pretty cleared up straight away. Not another flare.
It's off the track, which is good.
Yes, but come on. And that's down by the Paddock Club area. The expensive seats for this weekend. Don't want to see those flares. Really don't. Want to see this. Cars flat out on a lap. Charles Leclerc on provisional pole at the moment. Decent exit out of turn 3.
Really strong exit.
Away he goes then through this high-speed, twisty circuit. Your steering wheel barely straight for more than a blink of an eye, and Leclerc is going that little bit faster through the first sector. A 24.1 for Charles Leclerc, a 24.3 for Lando Norris is the next one to make his way out of that first sector. Jenson Button in the commentary box alongside me, giving it a little hustle with Charles Leclerc. Fingertip stuff from the Monegasque drivers. Verstappen still in contention there, only 300ths off through the first sector. Leclerc's not had the best middle sector on this lap.
No, he hasn't through turn 12 though. Great exit there, the traction of the Ferrari. Now into the second to last corner, one of the last corners that counts. Great exit, bit of understeer through there, through the last corner. DRS open. Look at his head down. He's got his head down as low as he can go.
Trying for every last thousandth of a second, and it's worked, it's improved. A 1:10.3, that's what the rest are now chasing. Carlos Sainz had a very good first sector and a decent middle sector too. He's very much in touch. Max Verstappen aced the middle sector. It was on pole last year. His DRS wasn't working. He was still on pole. It's working now. Verstappen crosses the line. It's working enough to put Verstappen on pole, and listen to that roar. But it's only provisional pole because there's others that can take it. Sainz won't. 900ths of a second. Carlos Sainz is away from the pace, and Sergio Perez has crashed at the final corner, and that means the yellow flags are out, and Perez, who crashed and denied Max Verstappen pole in Monaco, has crashed and denied others the chance to beat Max Verstappen here in Zandvoort, including Lewis Hamilton, who was on a decent lap at the time. Verstappen's on pole, his teammate losing it at the final corner. And what a dramatic end to qualifying. Let's look what happened to Sergio Perez.
Here he comes. He's carried a bit too much speed, was a bit wide there, gets on the curb. Well, he's actually oversteering before he hit the curb, and he just lost the rear. Not the way you want to end qualifying, but yeah, it is what it is. He was trying to find that extra time.
Well, not the way.
Around Max. Great day. Well done, Max. That was a mighty middle sector. Mighty. Well done, mate.
Good result.